Hey everyone, it's Future here and welcome to the Attic. Now today I want to talk about a topic that I quite like but I'm not very good at, so don't expect anything amazing in the sense of playing, but I want to talk a little bit about guitar and a little bit about bass. Now these are instruments that I quite enjoy playing but I'm not exceptionally good at. But one thing that you will always need when playing an instrument like this, one of these stick thingies with the strings, is some way to amplify the sound. Now, living in a fairly densely packed neighborhood, having a big stack of amps is not exactly ideal, aside from the cost and the space it takes up. So one solution I like to use is software to emulate that sort of thing, where you can still get the sound of a big rig without having to have the space and the investment to buy such a thing, let alone bothering the neighbors with a lot of noise. So the software I want to talk about today is ToneX and Amplitube by Multimedia. Now there are many virtual amp simulation thingies, but I think this one is particularly interesting for a couple of reasons. One being the hardware integration side of thing, and the other being that it's a pretty good value. It's not too expensive, like some of the neural DSP stuff, while offering a wide gamut of sounds and quite a bit of flexibility when it comes to Amplitube. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. We're going to keep it fairly surface level, so let's just get in there and hear some sounds. Alright, so this is ToneX running in Reaper, although it needs to be said that you can also run it standalone. So if you don't want to run it in a DAW, that's totally feasible. The interface of ToneX is fairly straightforward. You get your main selection of amps and models down here, and you get some additional controls on the top. You have a noise gate, a post compressor, you have the amp, cap, reverb, and the advanced parameters. These are just EQ settings, and these are mirrored on the caps. So if you change the treble here, it will change up there, and the same goes for bass, etc. Reverb is a reverb by iKey. It's not a modeled reverb, and the same goes for the EQ. It's just a layer on top of the captures. Speaking of captures, we won't be capturing today because, again, I don't have a rig I can capture. You can find plenty of videos online of people capturing their stuff, and the general consensus is it works pretty well. It's definitely not without flaws, and you are limited to just making a snapshot of the settings of the amp that it's on. You can't model. It also needs to be said that you can't capture time-based effects, so no modulation, no delay, no reverb, which is, I think, a pretty annoying compromise because those are pretty stable effects people tend to use, but it is what it is. Let's just quickly go through a few sounds to get a little bit of an idea of what this sounds like. Now again, I'm not especially a good guitar player, so this is going to be slightly embarrassing, but it will have to do. right now we're playing at max volume, and just a quick demonstration of how it reacts to volume. I'm going to dial down the guitar volume so you can hear how it reacts to that. And cleans up quite well. Now, aside from high gain and gain, you also get some clearer sounds. Now, the entire list of this version is very extensive. It's like 40,000 presets, which is a lot, so we're not going to go through all of that. But that's just to give you a little bit of an idea. Let's quickly add some reverb as well, just to get a little bit of an idea about that. Few modes, not that many, but it gives some options. Note that all these reverbs are stereos. That's pretty cool. If you want to mix and match, you can just simply lock, for instance, the amp, and then if you change preset, we'll only grab the cabinet. Just to show that for a second. And it can really change up the tone of your instrument quite a bit. And aside from cabs and amps, you also get some combos and maybe also interesting some pedals. Now again, these are snapshots of those pedals at specific settings. So it's not modeled pedals, it's just just a snapshot of that specific sound of the pedal at those settings. If all of this isn't enough, you can go to the tone nets, where you can find user-made tone impulses or captures, which is a very extensive list. The only downside is that there's no quality control, and also there's no grouping. So for instance, you can see someone captured quite a few versions of his Studio King rig. So it will just be a long list of that, instead of being able to collapse this to just a Studio King with different settings, which would have been more convenient. But it is what it is. You can find some classics here, you can find some weird gear here that you have probably never heard of. And just clicking it will give you that sound to play around with. So that's all pretty nice and easy to work with. But again, this is all focused at using snapshots, and especially with the idea that you can use this in the pedal form on your pedal board instead of an amp and a cab. That's sort of the use case here. And if you want a little bit more control, you're going to need Amplitube. So let's dive into Amplitube. And there we go. Now, right away you can see there's quite a lot more going on here. Aside from having a little view here with the makeup of your chain, you also get a nice little selection of amps on the side and cabs on the side and effects on the side and also pedals on the side. Now, it's important to note here that the amount of stuff you have here is going to depend on the tier of this software that you own. This is the professional tier, so there's quite a fair bit of stuff included in this specific tier. Although it is a bit light on some parts, like for instance the reverb, which is exactly one pedal, which is very minimalist. And in the studio effects you get a few more reverbs to fill it in. But it's definitely more focused on drive-like things and less so on really wacky, weird effects. But of course you can also put your pedals in front of this. So that opens up quite a few windows. Now, using this software is pretty straightforward. If, for instance, I want to add a delay, I can just grab a delay and drop it anywhere. I can drop it here before the amp, I can drop it in the effects loop, I can drop it behind the amp. And this gives you a bunch of different sounds. So let's just drop it in front of the amp for a second. The neat thing of Amplitude, it's much more pedalboard-like, so it definitely gives a lot more options to play around with things and creating interesting sounds. Now, these sounds don't translate to ToneX because you're using time-based effects, but it does work the other way around. So, for instance, if we wanted to import a ToneX stomp box, we totally can just by dragging in a ToneX. And now we can select any of the ToneX sounds, including the stuff you download from the Tone Net, which is pretty impressive. Let's just do a overdrive here into a clean amp. Let's disable this for a second. Amplitube takes it a little bit further. You can, for instance, do dual caps if that's your thing. You can just add another cap to the mix. You can also change some of the settings of the room and the cap, so it's a lot of extra space to play around with. And for now, let's just grab also custom IRs if you want to load your own IRs. But let's just take a big fat old bass cap here. You can really do quite a bit here. Aside from doing 2 caps, you can also do multiple amps. Let's say 2 amps. Let's say we only want distortion on one of the amps. And let's say we want to make this a clean amp. Let's actually pitch shift just that first one. So this is really made as a playground to play around with different sounds and really create interesting setups, chains of effects, and you can really go quite far with this if you want to. The only thing it's less good at is really big ambient soundscapes, because you're a little bit limited in those reverb and creative effects like granulators and that sort of stuff. But still, you can get some very usable sounds out of it. Or if you just want something a little bit more aggressive. After all, not every sound needs to be beautiful. And that's a quick overview of what Amplitude does. So you really have two different systems for two different use cases. So in conclusion, there is ToneX and there's Amplitude. ToneX is ideal for when you just need a cap sim and some way to emulate a amp. It also gives you quite a broad selection of user-created tones, although the curation of those is not that great. There's still a lot to choose from. If you're interested in the pedal side of things, it integrates nicely, so that's a big plus. On the other hand, we have Amplitube. Now, Amplitube is a lot more tweakery and a lot more engaging. I think it's a good thing to have if you're interested in some more sound designy things. And maybe you don't have a big pedal board and you just want to have extra effects at hand. That's a great solution for that sort of situation. I definitely enjoy both and I found both very useful. And yeah, it's definitely something I would recommend if you're into guitar. Just check out the free tiers, see how it runs, see if you like it. And that's it for this video. See you in the next one.